A very warm good morning to one and all. Universal Engineering College invites you to the international webinar series on entrepreneurship realization to reality during and post COVID 19. I would like to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Today, we are presenting the topic Exciting Opportunities for Engineers Post COVID. The topic will be presented by Mr. Suhas Inamda. He is an electrical engineer with Masters in Financial Management. He has over 30 years of work experience in manufacturing industries and facilities management in India and United Arab Emirates. He is currently working as head of planning and technical support at Al Wazal Properties, Dubai. He also worked as faculty for 1 year in Engineering Staff College of India in Hyderabad and conducted some short-term courses on specialized subjects in electrical engineering and general management. During his career in manufacturing industries, he has worked in 5 different states: Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Maharashtra, and Gurgaon. On the personal front, his passion is to write motivational fiction stories and has published 8 books so far. These books are available on Amazon worldwide, and some of his books are Power Games of Life, Second Chance, Altered Destiny, My Friend Jenny. And I would like to say one more thing. If you have any questions during the presentation of our topic, feel free to type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel, or you have the option of raise hand in control panel for asking your doubts. And please remind that we will also have time for questions at the end. Now, without further delay, we will turn the time over to Dr. Jose Jacob, respected principal, Universal Engineering College, Valivatam. Please, sir.
Good morning, all. Once again, welcome to Universal Engineering College. Mr. Suhas sir also. So today the topic is most relevant in this present scenario. Exciting opportunities for engineers. That is post-COVID. We know all engineers have some anxiety regarding the opportunities in the post-COVID situation. But we must live with COVID. So today, Suhas sir will present the most exciting opportunities for engineers. So on behalf of Universal Engineering College, I welcome all of you as well as Suhas sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jose Jacob. Thank you for a very wonderful introduction, Minacha. It's my honor and privilege to be with you all today this morning, to be a speaker in the international webinar series on the entrepreneurship realization to reality during and post COVID-19. I thank Mr. Shamsuddin also, who is my ex-colleague, and Dr. Jose Jacob for inviting me to be here. And I hope that I will definitely give some enlightenment to all of you on this subject. Now, I have been also attending the webinars in the last 2 days. Dr. Mike and Mr. Munir also yesterday. And there is they were wonderful webinars, so there is no doubt about that. And they have already given good definitions about what is entrepreneurship. So let me not go into the Wikipedia definition or any kind of a definition, bookish definition of what is entrepreneurship. In simple words, for us to understand, entrepreneurship is a person who has got some investment in a field which he is familiar with or which he has got expertise in, and he wishes to make some commercial business out of it and hoping for getting a profit. This is the most simplest way of a definition of what is entrepreneurship. Now here there are 3 or 4 elements if we really see and make it more simplified. One is you need to have investment, money you should have. Second is you should have knowledge in the field. Without knowledge, basic knowledge. You don't need to have any extensive knowledge, but you need to have some basic. The third thing is that you should have the passion, of course, to do something in that field. And fourth is you expect some kind of a profit to come out of it, because it's after all for making some profits. It's not a charitable thing. However, apart from all these things, there is one more thing which is very important, and that is the risk-taking ability of a person. The appetite, the risk appetite. the attitude, the aptitude to take risks. And this is where many of the entrepreneurship, they don't see the light of the day. If there is something which is more abundantly available in this world, it is the talent which is not being utilized correctly. There are many people in this world who have all the three components that we just now spoke about, which is the money. There are many people with money. There are many people who have passion as well. There are many people who have a lot of knowledge as well. However, they are not able to put everything together because they are afraid of failure. They are the fear of failure. They don't want to take the risks. And this is where the things don't really happen. And let us start with, on a very positive note, let me share with you certain examples which I'm sure all of you know about the people who took risks and they succeeded in life. They flourished, they rose to stardom. And these examples definitely inspire us to take the steps in the direction that we want to. So let me start with the first example. The first one, think of a person in his 20s or 30s in Gujarat. He's some bhujias, as they call, which is a fried snacks on the Mount Girnar to the pilgrims who are visiting there, and he makes it as a business. That is his livelihood. Subsequently, he goes to Yemen and works there as a pet station attendant, the person who fills petrol in your car when you take your car there. Now imagine, I'm sure some of you might have known about his identity so far, but friends, this person went on to build the biggest business empire in India post-independence. He is hailed as one of the most, the trailblazer in the corporate history of the India. He made the Bombay Stock Exchange, the Indian stock markets, dance to his tunes. He is none other than Dhirubhai Ambani. Now, you might be really surprised. A person from such humble beginnings and humble backgrounds can rise to such high levels. The reason? Because he had passion. He had everything else, as we mentioned earlier. He had the risk-taking appetite, and he also had the passion. In fact, to quote one of his very popular, many of his statements, sentences are very popular among many people. And one of them, it says that follow your dream. Otherwise, somebody else will employ you to follow their dreams. The choice is yours. And when he died in 2002, his net worth was $6 billion US dollars. So that is one example which should inspire us. The second example I would like to is again going back in the history. Again, a person to known to all of you, but you do not know the beginning of it, probably. Some of you might know. The person who worked as a lab technician. We are all from engineering college, so we know there are labs and the lab technician, the status of a lab technician. Now, this person worked as a lab technician. However, he had a dream. He wanted to do something spectacular. He had limited resources, but he had ideas, he had passion. And then what he did, because of his little knowledge about the chemistry and the chemicals and whatever, he thought, why not let us make a detergent powder? Because detergent powder will be always required, come what may. It is not something of a luxury item. It's something which is always required. And then he manufactured a detergent powder in his backyard in the house. And he went around selling it on a bicycle. I'm talking of 1960s and 70s, maybe 70s and 80s. And then he sold it on the bicycle to the people with a promise that please use it. And if you have any problem, I am coming again on the same route tomorrow. You can return back to me, no questions. The USP, the unique selling proposition of his product was that at that time, when he introduced this humble, small product in a very small in the rural Gujarat, at that time, there were only multinational companies who were manufacturing the detergent powders, Surf and all those big names, whatever. And they were selling at a price of 13 rupees per kilo. Now this person, he said, I'm selling at 3 rupees per kilo. There's a huge difference. It's almost 1/3. People were skeptical initially, but they started buying and they found that the product is wonderful. They started asking for more. He started employing 2, 3, 4, 5 people in his backyard to make it handmade detergent powder in his house. And subsequently, he had more and more. And now you'll be surprised to know that this person is none other than Mr. Darshan Bhai Patel, the owner of Nirma detergent, soaps and factories. And now he has got even technological institute, he has got engineering colleges. So Karsan Bhai Patel, his net worth today is again $6 billion. He dreamt big at that time, and then he came a very long way in life. And today also he is very active. He is the chairman of the group, and he has got diversified businesses beyond the detergent powder, whatever. Let us fast forward and come to the present. These two examples, of course, they are stalwarts, they are big people. Currently, we have one interesting case. Again, you know, everyone knows this product, what about? But the genesis of the product, how it came into being, probably is not known so much. But it will help us to know, because today we are talking about entrepreneurship. We want to stimulate people to think in the lines of entrepreneurship, to become entrepreneurs. Now, this person was an ordinary employee in one of the IT companies or whatsoever. I'm not sure of IT, but one of the office employees. And during the lunchtime, when he went into the canteen, he saw a long line of people waiting in the queue to get what they wanted in the canteen. Now, this was slightly irritating. I mean, you don't really feel happy to be waiting in the queue, near the canteen, because it's a lunch hour. You need to finish the lunch, you need to enjoy lunch, you need to spend time on that. But if you have to wait for a considerable time, then it is something not good really. His mind started working. He thought, why should people wait? What is the reason for this? And then he realized that people, when they reached the counter, they asked for the menu card, and then they started thinking, discussing among themselves what they should eat today. Then they had good discussion, then the choices being made, then the choices again changed, and that took the time. So what he did, a simple idea was born in his mind. He said, why not we print the menu card and send it to all his colleagues in the office, in the email, in the official email Outlook or whatsoever. So what happens is, people in their free time before lunch, everyone has some free time, definitely in the morning. So they can look into that menu card, they can find out what they can eat for the day. And when they reach the counter, their choice is already made. They are already clear what they want. And then that will reduce the time of the queue. And friends, this person is the owner of Zomato. Everyone knows Zomato. We order a lot of things from Zomato, but we don't know the concept. The idea of Zomato was born by a person standing in a queue in his office canteen. And today you will be surprised to know that Zomato is operating in 24 countries and its turnover is around 1,500 crores. So these examples will give you enough kind of ammunition to start thinking that yes, it is possible. It is possible and we can do it. Let us come to the second one, the next topic here. Having established some of the successful people, entrepreneurs, industrialists, businessmen, whatever, how about engineers becoming entrepreneurs? Because there is always some kind of a doubt. Some people say engineers, no, they can't become entrepreneurs. Some people say, yes, they can become their own entrepreneurs. So there are some kind of a yes and no happening at different levels, different percentages. So let us put it all to rest. I have got with me here to share with you examples of the top 5 engineer entrepreneurs who are ruling today, and how some of the interesting stories of how they started it. This will emphasize on you to say that yes, engineers also can become good entrepreneurs. Let me start with the 2 people, Sachin Bansal and Binny Bansal. I hope half of you at least must have heard their names. Both of them are BTech computer science engineer from IIT Delhi. They started a very humble, small online bookstore. It's an online bookstore. And the first year, imagine, you will be surprised, I'm sure. In the first year, they only did 20 transactions, 20 transactions. And friends, they are the owner of a company called Flipkart. Who doesn't know Flipkart in India today? Flipkart is a very big name. They do thousands, lakhs of transactions every day. And today it is again a $7 billion company. This is what people can do, the engineers they have done. A second example, Vijay Shekhar Sharma. He is again a BTech from he is electronics and communication engineering. And he started a company which all of us know, Paytm. Who doesn't know Paytm? I'm sure all of you have installed Paytm in your mobile phones and you use it regularly. of the company, Paytm, can be gauged from the simple fact that it has recorded 5 billion transactions last year. Now, 5 billion transactions, it is not small. All of us know that the population of India is 1.35 billion, right? That's what we know. Now, imagine that means every person on an average is using at least 3 times in a year Paytm. That is the biggest success any person can achieve. And this was achieved by an engineer again. Let us talk of another engineer. His name is Phanindra Reddy Sama. Now, he is electrical and electronics engineer and from BITS Pilani. Now, this is interesting. One day, while he was going from Bangalore to Bandipur, that is another example, sorry. So, Phanindra Reddy Sama, he started a company called Red Bus. And the reason why he started Red Bus is because he had difficulty in booking the buses. I mean, one day he wanted to travel from somewhere and he found that it is difficult. He did not get the reservation for the bus. And then he said, why? Why should there be a problem in booking reservation for a bus? Buses are daily, they're traveling, people are traveling. So there should be some mechanism. And he started the company called Red Bus, I'm sure which many of you might have used, if not all of you. But today, this Red Bus company is operating in 6 countries and it has got 2 crore registered users with them. So this is another success story of an engineer who became an entrepreneur. And the next one is where the Bangalore to Bandipur story comes. Sorry for that, my apologies, I mixed it. Bhavish Agarwal. Now, Bhavish Agarwal is again BTech, computer science engineering, and Ankit Bhati. Ankit Bhati is a BTech mechanical both are from IIT Bombay. And Bhavish Agarwal, one day he wanted to go from Bangalore to Bandipur and he booked a cab for this. And the problem that happened, which all of us have experienced at one time or other in our lives, is that halfway through the journey, the cab driver, those days, I mean, the taxis are booked, by the people in the travel offices, and you have booked a taxi and all that. 15 years back, 20 years. And then the taxi driver suddenly halfway through, he stopped the taxi and he said, no, we do need to renegotiate the rates. Now, this was not fair. I mean, if you, at the beginning of the journey, if you decide something, you need to stick to that. That's what is ethical. But those days, ethics were not followed by all the taxi drivers. And this triggered in him that why not we have something by which this problem can be eliminated. And friends, Ola Cabs was born with this idea. Ola Cabs, who doesn't know Ola Cab? Who has not used Ola Cabs today? I'm sure all of us have used. Ola Cab is a big success story in India, and it was started by these 2 engineers. The last example, it is our own example, Kerala. I'm sure when I say Kerala example, people would be delighted with this. This is about a person, Ravindran. He is an BTech mechanical from Government Engineering College, Kannur, our own Kannur. And then he was working happily in one company, whatever. And one day it so happened that he helped his friend to solve some problems in mathematics because his friend was appearing for some competitive exam. And while explaining the problems to him, he realized that he enjoyed teaching very much. And then this passion was so great that soon a word spread around in his friend circle that he loves teaching. And people, his friends, they started to him for advices, for knowing the doubts and clarifications and everything. And that's it. He realized that this can be a business. I mean, this can be something good. This is a noble field. Why not? And that's how, dear friends, you will be surprised to know, Byju's apps was formed from this concept. His name is Byju Ravindran. And who doesn't know Byju's app today? Byju is being widely utilized, and post-COVID, there will be even more usage of Byju and some competition which might be born after that. Because online education is something which is the future going to be. And today, Byju's app is 3,300 crores. This is again from a very simple, humble idea it started. Now, when I gave these examples, all examples that I gave, what I want to say is that ideas can come from anywhere. There need not be something kind of a high profile meeting room with all the strategists and the specialists and consultants to sit together and think about how to start a business in what field and all. No, we just need to keep our eyes and ears open, be open to the surroundings, and sense where we can find a niche where we can start a business. These people have done that. This is not something which is hypothetical that we are doing. Only thing is that we need to know this, have the risk taking capability and the passion to pursue. Now let us quickly go to the, having described comfortably, conveniently, now it is proven that engineers can become good entrepreneurs. Let us take the name of 3 richest engineer entrepreneurs in India. I'm sure it will motivate and entice you, definitely. The names are very familiar. This is just for information that yes, engineers can reach the highest level. As I'm getting some kind of comment here saying that there is some network issue. Okay, sorry, that is one. I think I'm able. You are able to hear, all of you. Is it clear what I'm saying, or there are any network issues from my side? Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a good confirmation. Okay, the 3 names that now I'm going to say will definitely inspire you and motivate you further to think. Yes, the first one is, who doesn't know Mukesh Ambani? Of course, Mukesh Ambani, the Reliance Industries chairman. He is a chemical engineer, and today his net worth is 40 billion US dollars, 40 billion US dollars. The second richest engineer entrepreneur in India is Azim Premji. Azim Premji, the chairman of Wipro Industries, he is an electrical engineer, and his net worth is 18 billion US dollars. And the third name in the list is Shiv Nadar. Shiv Nadar, who doesn't know Shiv Nadar? Is the HCL Technologies, formed way 1990s when the computer and the IT revolution was being made. That time he started the company. He is an electrical and electronics engineer, and his net worth is 14 billion US dollars. So these are some of the success stories, successful engineer entrepreneurs that I wanted to share at the beginning of my this webinar, so that it motivates you really to think. So how do we prepare engineers for entrepreneurship? Let us quickly look at some of the points which probably are known to everyone, but once we know them in a concise, like a capsule, everything together, then probably it makes an impact. And I'm sure Universal Engineering College is already doing some of these things to develop their engineers into entrepreneurs. The first one is probably creating awareness among the engineers, the students, different batches of students about the industries. And that can be done by 2 ways. One is by having as many industry visits as possible in the nearby areas. That will make the engineers open up beyond books, because normally they only be restricted into the books. So have more and more industry visits that will open up their ideas, open up their minds, their views, and their horizons to think beyond. This is one. And second is to get the industrialist in the college for a regular lecture, maybe a weekly, maybe a fortnightly, or maybe a monthly. Have some kind of a seminar, workshop, or a symposium, or some kind of just an address by any industrialist or a senior person working in the industry in the nearby areas, which will motivate all the engineers to think in these lines. I'm sure this is a very effective mechanism to inculcate the entrepreneurship qualities in the engineering students. The second one is to give industrial assignments as case studies in the examinations which are held from time to time. This will also make the students to think beyond. I mean, this is again not like a book question and you just mug up the answers and think only about the question answer and all that. This should be something analytical, which is from an industry which is coming from anywhere. I mean, industry case studies are available everywhere. Nowadays, what is not available, you have to search for that. Everything is there. So having some kind of practical case studies for the students in their regular exams, which could be not the final exams, of course, but the in-between exams that you have, or introduce something which will incentivize them to think and think actively the different approach to solve a problem, that will open up their ideas and minds to think about the entrepreneurship. The next one is internship during the summer holidays. Have some marks assigned to this. Summer holidays, everyone, of course, every year we have summer holidays. So the 3rd year and the 4th year batches, they can be encouraged to go for some kind of an internship for 2 months or 1 month in the industries. I'm sure Kerala has got a lot of industries, though not as many as other states, but now it is developing. Now it is really breaking all the barriers, and there are many industries in Kerala as well. So that would really help the students in getting some kind of their outlook towards the industries, what it is. One more thing is electives on entrepreneurship can be added in the third year and the fourth year, so that that's a full-fledged subject. One course on entrepreneurship will really make them think and focus on that subject and get the ideas and assimilate those concepts. And the last one, probably it will be very helpful, is a financial help or a support or a stake by the college in small-scale industries which are started by students or the alumni group. So when you ask the students or the alumni to start industries, probably they need capital. And the school or the college can voluntarily say, open a kind of a scheme to say that any of our students, if he is starting a small scale industry, are there to support, because college is a reservoir of knowledge. And you have infinite knowledge with you. You have the faculty who is actively involved in research all the time. So you can contribute. Who can be better than you to work as a consulting role with them with some kind of a financial stake? Financial stake will definitely work both ways. There'll be accountability from the college to work in the interest of the company. And second, it will reduce the burden on the young entrepreneur, the student, and he can dare to dream and say that, yes, I have a support from my college to start this financial support, because they will be needing more of financial support. So these are some of the quick points which one by one, probably in different proportions if implemented, it can help go a long way in propelling the students into the entrepreneurship field. Now, when we think of this, we need to slightly step back one step and see where we are standing right now. Probably the next 2-3 minutes, what I'm going to say may not be very pleasant to listen, but that's the reality, and we cannot shy away from the reality. And that is about the engineering education as such today in India. Now, there have been many reports of the engineering colleges being not performing well, closing down some of the engineering colleges, admissions going vacant, or engineers not getting jobs, and various kind of things. So there was actually this problem snowballed in the last maybe 7, 8, or 10 years something. And then the government, the AICTE, they formed a committee, and that was formed around 2 years back by under BVR Mohan Reddy. He and his 6 colleagues, total 7 people, they had a committee at a very highest level at the AICTE, and their task to study what is ailing, what is going wrong in the engineering sector, engineering education sector, because they highlighted 2 main problems in front of them. One was that there were very low admissions to the extent that today in India, there are 16 lakh engineers being generated every year. There are seats, 16 lakh seats are available. But last year and earlier before that, around 8 lakh seats only were filled up. This is alarming. This is not correct. So 8 lakh seats going vacant speaks many things. I mean, there could be many possibilities. One of the reasons could be that the quality of education has been low, or there was a big supply and demand. I mean, you created many more colleges than what is required. Maybe there are only 8 lakh people who are willing to take engineering, and we have created 16 lakh seats. So there is some imbalance somewhere. And the second problem, of all the problems, they can be broadly categorized in these 2 levels. The second problem was about the employability. It was found that around 20% of engineers only were able to get jobs which are commensurate to the knowledge that they're expected to have at the end of the engineering education. So this was also something like alarming. So they came up with certain recommendations. That actually, to be precise, there was a 41 page report. And in that, there are the 6 main important recommendations is what I have taken for today's 6 or 7 recommendations. The first one was about optimum capacity. AICTE has given approval to close around 800 colleges in the last 6 or 7 years. This was something bad, not correct really. And they said that from 2020 onwards, no more engineering colleges will be given approval to start in India. Nothing till further notice. So this is good news, because now there is at least the glut will stop hereafter. And the second thing was that the second recommendation was given is to re-allot the seats based on the branch, the admissions that are happening. Because it might happen that some branches are, there is a big competition for them, and some branches are going vacant. So there is no point in having those seats there. Maybe you can have it transform within themselves. So this is the re-allotting the seats within the different branches. And the third one is extensive usage of MOOC by faculty and students. These are the recommendations coming from the AICTE, the BVR Mohan Reddy Committee. And this says that MOOC is a very new concept. It is massive online open courses. Now, this is something slightly different from the online courses which are available by many universities and colleges, whatever. But this is something, a new concept which has come up, which is like on a very large scale. There is, it is not content based, it is on a context based. Normally, the online courses are all content based. I mean, you have studied this when you get this degree, and that's it. But this massive online open courses are open for all. They are not, there is no restriction, there are very less restriction. And the idea, the main objective behind MOOC, among all other objectives, is to provide a kind of a mechanism, a window for all the faculty as well as the students to enrich themselves in whichever field they want. So this is the concept of MOOC, and the directive which came from the committee, BVR Mohan Reddy, is to encourage all the faculty and the students to take up the courses as per their liking, their desire, their this expertise, their skill, and then develop themselves so that, you know, overall level of the knowledge also will be increasing. The next is about increased industry interaction, which we already discussed earlier in this webinar. And the next is promote the entrepreneurship among the students. This is also again one of the things that is happening. I'm happy to see that Universal Engineering College doing many of these things right now. So this is something very good to note. I'm very happy to see. And I think in this context, I can say that I saw some admissions are great, admissions are happening, and even the placements are also good in Universal Engineering College. So you are already at the ahead of the curve, but there is always a scope for improvement for everyone. That's one. And the last one is the new branches in emerging technology. I'm sure the age-old traditional branches, civil, mechanical, electrical, electronics, computer science, and all are there, but the future is not going to be the same. We need to have more branches, and that is coming ahead in my session, because I finished already 30 minutes, so I have got 30 minutes. I will talk about this in the next few slides. So these are some of the challenges that we are faced by the engineering sector, and we need to address this when we have a paradigm shift of going towards the entrepreneurship. The second, now comes the technology itself. The technology has got one thing. Either you can call it characteristics or an issue or a problem or whatever, but it becomes obsolete very soon. I mean, it doesn't stay. Technology, if something is commissioned somewhere, it becomes obsolete. There is something else happening. So let us now, for the next few minutes, discuss about what technology, get the point exactly right, about how the technology is becoming obsolete. Now, there are examples of the obsolete products without further diverting or anything. Straight go to the point. The participants who are in their 40 plus or 50 plus, my age category group, you would have seen audio cassettes, which many of students may not have seen. They're obsolete. You will never find an audio cassette again, the one which a tape and it's stuck up in the tape recorder and all that. And the 50 plus people would definitely remember using a pencil to make it again set right once it gets stuck up in the player. The floppy disks, of course, okay. The next few years of generation might have seen a floppy disk which had 1.44 MB, only the capacity of the data. I mean, today, if you tell any child that we used to have a prized possession, we used to carry as 1.44 MB, they would probably laugh. They'll say, what you guys, I mean, like cavemen. That's the thing. The next is the compact discs. Even CDs are going to become extinct. They are already become extinct. One small test, you go to next time any electronic home appliances department store, the section in that any big store, and look for CD players, you will not find. CD players, either hardly one or two you will find, because CDs have also become obsolete now. Even DVDs for that matter. The next is pagers. Remember in 1990s or late 80s, pagers, they were hailed as something like a big revolution because they can contact anyone at any time. Now you don't see pager. It's an insult. If somebody has a pager, it's a humiliation for him that it is not manufactured at all, first of all. The STD booths. Remember in the 90s and 80s, we had a lot of STD booths. That was the hallmark of connectivity across India. All rural areas, you will find every nook and corner STD booths. They have all disappeared because huge development, advancement in the communication sector. It's very affordable. You have got, I mean, the throwaway prices, one of the best rates in the worldwide that we have in India for communication. The manual typewriters, again, the people in 50 plus, you would recall, there were institutes which taught on the manual typing, and there was exam called lower and higher based on the speed at which you can type the number of keys. Now, this is the technology that has already become obsolete. This was just to refresh your minds to say how technology becomes obsolete. When I say these products, remember, these industries have closed. The people who worked in these industries have become jobless. Either they transform themselves into something else. The people, everyone associated with these industries is closed. Even the film, the Kodak and the Konica and all this. Remember photo studios? We used to go for negative 36 pictures and all. Where do you find? You have to search. Even if you search, it is very difficult to find that role if the company is closed. Now, something interesting. After having spoken about the products that have become already obsolete, let us talk about the products that are going to become obsolete in the next 5 years. Interesting, right? The GPS in the cars. I mean, all of us had a different separate attachment of a GPS in the car maybe till 5 years ago. But now in the mobile, the way Ola and Uber uses and all of us use whenever we are going for a new place, anywhere destination, we use the mobile GPS. There is no need for a separate GPS. So the companies, Gartner and all this who made this GPS, they are all going to be out of their business. The compact fluorescent lamps. In the early part of the century, in 2000 and all, the incandescent bulbs, the electrical engineers and the energy efficiency team will recollect about advocating CFL. Everywhere they used to say CFL, replace tube lights, replace the bulbs with CFL. Now CFL has become a history. Now you've got LED lights, LED of all sorts. You've got focus light, beam light, cove light, strip light, and whatever you call, but CFL is again a history. The multi-function devices, printers, particularly in colleges, I'm sure, you have many for each section and everywhere and all that, but they are going to go away very soon. Why? Because everything will be scanned, e-copies and e-documents and all that. So there will be no such requirement of having a multifunction device which generates thousands of papers you print year after year. So even if you have one, treasure the look of it, because after 10 years or 5 years, you will not find a multifunction device in any establishment anywhere. Petrol pumps we know, but yes, very soon the electric cars are going to take over and there'll be no more petrol pumps. Who can imagine a city without petrol pumps? There'll be electrical charging stations that are already started in some cities across the world. The postal stamps, they're already in extinction, and whatever is remaining probably will remain only for the academic purposes that the postal department, but postal department itself is facing threat. They are supplying various kind of different items, non-postal items they are delivering these days to stay afloat, even though their network is one of the strongest network in right now. And the business cards. Who would need a business card in these days? You need to really, these days, it might be something for you to know, but you need to work hard to conceal your identity. You are known, you are open, everyone knows about you today. You can't hide your identity. You tell me one name and we can tell 100 things about you today. Through the social media, through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through Twitter, and through whatnot. I mean, his name will be there somewhere or other. So business cards are losing their relevance very fast. I mean, it will not be there anymore. Now, what will be the new technology coming forward? You are all again stalwarts, the faculty. I'm really honored to speak to all the faculties, and I really respect all the faculties. You are doing a great job. You are actually building the nation. This statement I wanted to say in the beginning, but I forgot. Good that I remembered now. I really deeply respect all the engineering faculty, because you are creating engineers year after year who build the nations. So you are contributing to the development of the nation. A great salute to you all. Now the new technologies that are going to come, artificial intelligence, the names we all have heard. Let us take some very interesting cases also on this. Artificial intelligence, we have got machine learning, we have got robotic process applications, we have got drones, we have got IoT, we have got BIM, we have got data analytics, and these are all the fields. All of us know this, but however, keeping it very simple, not going into very complicated, because every subject may not be interesting to everyone. So let me say how these technologies, one small example of them, how it will impact a common man, how it will impact all of us. So let us talk about the artificial intelligence and machine learning. We know in Japan, there are metro stations. And in front of the entrance of the metro station on the sides, there are some billboards, digital billboards, the advertisement boards, where advertisements keep changing every 5 seconds or 7 seconds, that we have everywhere. In India also, we have many places. But this is something unique. So what they have done in the entry and exit points of the metro stations in Japan, the digital boards, they have installed cameras around it, focusing on both sides. Now, these cameras are intelligent cameras. They study the profile of the people walking past the billboards, approaching from a distance. And then they do a profiling of these people. They will see whether they are male or female, young or old, what age group they are. And based on that, the advertisement is being shown on the billboard when they pass through that. Now, is it not something brilliant? The reason is because then the hit rate, the success ratio of penetration ratio of the effectiveness of the advertisement is very high, because there is no point in showing some fancy things to an old guy who is walking past, or talking about some kind of a hospitals to a young guy who is walking past. I mean, if an old woman is passing, you can't show some, very fancy cosmetics or whatsoever, and vice versa. The rest is to your imagination. You can think about it. But this is the level of advertising it has reached, that they focus based on the artificial intelligence collected through the cameras, and then they define what product this kind of a group would be most likely to be interested in. And then that advertisement is shown immediately after what is going. There will be some more algorithm in that, but this is the basic concept. Now, the machine learning is something very interesting. All of you must have remembered last year, or probably 1.5 years ago, there was something called a 10-year challenge. Many of you remember probably, yes. Now, the 10-year challenge was on Facebook, probably. It was on Facebook mostly, where people encouraged one another to post their photos 10 years earlier and today. And this was like crazy. Social media is crazy. It is mindless, by the way. There is nothing, that's a separate subject by itself. Social media is a frenzy. It does not go rules. It works on passion. It works on craziness whatsoever. So there was this craze suddenly called 10-year challenge, which was widely participated by everyone around the world. And there is a conspiracy theory. I don't vouch for it. It's a statutory kind of my disclaimer to say that I don't say this is correct, but this possibility exists, is that this was started by a chain of pharmaceutical companies who wanted to study how people age in 10 years in different parts of the world. Now, if they asked the data for this, people would be hesitant. They'll say, no, you are breaching my privacy. I won't tell you. This is my confidential. So they thought, why not? Let's say a simple thing. They just, floated this concept, and the people upheld it, and it traveled around the world. And now these people have got data of millions of people with respect to how they age and what they do with that. This is where the machine learning comes. A simple example to communicate, say the point about it. They study how people age, in which area the hairline of the people recede, in which area the wrinkles start appearing, in which area maybe the people will start wearing glasses, in which area what happens. There are so many possibilities of what information they can get from this, and that will help them to manufacture products and segment and distribute them into those territories for higher efficiency. I think this point, the left is left to your imagination, because I have time limited, another 20 minutes. I'm keeping a watch on the time as well. So this is what is machine learning about. Next is the drones. We have got, so the surveillance, how drones are going to change the surveillance. Now you have got security running around the boundary across everywhere. Now that is no more required. Simply if one security walks around the campus, say every 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever, there's simply a control room. There will be a person sitting there, and he will send a drone with a camera, and it will focus everywhere and come back within 3 minutes or 5 minutes as per the time. And he will get all the, why is there a need to go around person? The facade inspections, civil engineers, structural engineers, this will be interesting for you to know. If there are some cracks in the facade, now in a building on the 4th floor onwards, if you have to really identify any kind of a crack in facade, What do? You need to have a scaffolding, or you need to have some kind of a rope mechanism to go to that area and inspect. No need hereafter. Simply put some cameras on the drones and fly there. It will go to close to that and come back. There are drones which are used for facade cleaning as well. I mean, it's a machined one. It has got a cleaning wiper with that. It starts flying with a detergent on that, and then it just cleans the facade. So there are many multiple possibilities with the drones that are happening. The next is IoT. IoT is a very popular word among all the electrical, electronics, computer science engineers. It is Internet of Things. Simple, very simple. Whatever is connected to electricity can be controlled and monitored from a remote location. This is the simplest way. Now, how much what? On an average, and you will be surprised with the statistics, every person has got 7 devices connected to him. You've got your mobile, you've got your desktop, you've got your laptop, you've got your iPad, and whatnot. You've got many things with you. Some people have smart watches, which are all electronically, by the way, signal, Wi-Fi, and all connected. So on an average, there are 7. So you have billions of devices. And these all devices can be connected through IoT. And the one example of IoT I can give you is, for example, I mean, this is only to open up your ideas to say what extent it can go on. There are solar panels installed on the top of the buildings, and they need regular cleaning. So there are, first of all, robots involved there with a cleaner, and every periodically, say 1 month or 15 days or whatever, it just cleans. So there is no manpower required there. It's all saved. Further to that, what they have done is that they have collected the data from the weather forecast, official weather forecast department of that region, and they see whether there is any dust storm. Is there any heavy breeze going to come in the next 3 days, 4 days? And if there is a schedule of cleaning the panels on say 17th of a month, and if the weather predicts that on 19th, there is going to be heavy winds, breeze across and some storm, and then what happens, there will be a lot of sand deposit happening on the panel, and again it will be rendered useless for the next panel, next cycle. This is what is happening today, by the way. Today, when the manually people go and clean, and if tomorrow is a storm, after only 1 month, people will go back again there. They don't do, because there is no even the mechanism to understand whether it is working or not. First of all, there is one more thing before that, is that the solar panel, whatever is supposed to generate, there is one more parameter being connected through IoT again, that how much this panel's capacity, based on the capacity of the panel, how much electricity it is supposed to generate. This is one parameter. And second is actual generation, how much it has generated. Whenever the difference between the two goes beyond certain limit, which is say 3% or 5%, it gives an indication to the people that there is something wrong with this. And the maintenance team or the cleaning can be dispatched. This is an advanced level, again, of IoT, usage of IoT. No need to go around checking everywhere physically. Those days are gone. And even the weather forecast, linking with that, it makes it even more efficient that you can program your cleaning schedules based on the forecast from the weather, so that it will have even further efficiency, higher efficiency. The next is the BIM. The BIM is something for the civil engineers. It is business integration modeling, business integration modeling, where the data is there for the buildings from consultants stage up to the facility management stage. So the consultant, the project, and the maintenance guys, and everyone is there, even the property management. So the scenario for this will be, I'm having 15 minutes more. So the scenario will be that when someone walks into a property realtor's office, for example, say a big developer in city, in say Kochi, there are many developers, real estate is developing very fast in Kochi. So they go, and in the sales offices are generally very fantastic sales offices they have, irrespective of the quality that they deliver later. That is a separate subject. I don't want to comment on that. But however, the additional feature these sales offices will have hereafter is that when a customer walks in and sits there, at that time, these people are going to say, okay, sir, you are interested in what? You are interested in 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, penthouse, villa, apartment, what? After knowing exactly what is interested in, they will say, okay, these are my availabilities. You are looking interested for, say, first floor to 20th floor. Which floor you are interested in? They'll say, okay, say 18th floor. Then they will simply switch on in their computer the BIM application, and there will be a virtual tour. When they say virtual tour, it will be like open the door and then you walk across. When you enter an apartment, what you see on the right to left, everything the camera will show us. It's there, program. By mouse, with your mouse, you can move which side you want to see, which side you want to see Zoom, and then you enter into this room, then you enter into that room, you go to the balcony, you get the view what you want. By sitting in the office, you are able to get a complete view about that apartment. This is one of the benefits of the BIM. There are many other benefits which probably specialized subjects on maintenance and facilities can be discussed about that. Then the next one is the data analytics. This is very important. For the next 10 to 15 years, data analysts are going to be the kings in this world. They are going to rule the world. And today, the application of data analysts, if you really see, they are currently busy studying about the corona and the COVID-19. I mean, infinite ways of collecting the data to anticipate a pandemic in future, because this result will be very useful for the humanity, because the pandemic has come after 100 years. We all know that in 1920, there was one Spanish flu, something which killed some millions of people, not to scare. But then, and this again, now 2020, we are having this, something very big. I mean, this is the big, enough has been said in different, everyone knows how big it is and how far we are from whatever. But the point is that these data analysts are today working overtime, working hard to collect all the data. And just to give an idea, they're collecting the preparedness, the susceptibility of the people who are falling sick, testing positive for this, the details of the profile of the patients who are recovering from this. What is the recovery time period taken for them? What is the incubation period before the symptoms start appearing in asymptomatic patients? What is the immunity level of the people? What is their living habits? I mean, what kind of conditions they were living earlier? The temperature of the area in which they were there, the vitamin D content within their bodies, whatever. So these are some of the only parameters about COVID which these data analysts are collecting, and they will collect many more. And then they will come to know that in next time if it happens, how we can be better prepared for this. And why would the humankind not need this data? This is very important, because if it happens after 10 years, people know what to do. People will immediately be able to control it, contain it, and maybe overcome it again faster, because now we are not. As of today, we are still struggling with this. So this is the point. Now the next, the professions which are facing extinction. We talked about the products, we talked about the new technology. So now the extinction, there are lawyers who are going to be out of business, because in US, there are softwares available which will predict the probability of winning a case based on the previous cases that have been fought in the court. The software has got a algorithm which collects all the data of the earlier cases, the arguments, the positive, the different two sides of the argument, and how the verdicts happened. And once you feed your detail, it will tell you how much it is likely, how much the success ratio or probability of your winning the case. Now this is making the mediocre and the ordinary lawyers redundant across. Surgeons. Now there are robotic applications, robotic surgeons happening. I mean, a surgeon is sitting at one place and he has got 3 robots at different places and they are performing surgeries based on his instructions. There is no mistake. There is a high precision. There is no leave or sick leave or anything. These robotic surgeons, they will do exactly what he wants to say, and he's seeing what they are doing exactly. So the surgeons probably are also going to be in the next in the line. The teachers are also facing, because in Bangalore, there is a school, I don't want to name it, not that I remember it right now, but it is not good because it will be like advertising for them. But they have already employed for class 9 and class 10, biology, social studies, and another 2 subjects. The teachers, they're robots. These robots come into the class and they teach the lesson. That's it, simple. And they are like Amazon, Siri, and Alexa that you have. They are also receptive for the questions. So when the children ask questions, they will answer it 1 time, 2 time, 100 times without getting angry, without getting irritated. These robots, they will not ask for leave, they will not ask for promotion, they will not ask for any increments. So why would a school management hereafter employ teachers? Question to think about. The travel agents are no more going to be there. I mean, they are already closing down their offices. Now because of COVID, they will further close down if whatever are remaining. But you have got this Make My Trip, you have got Yatra, you have got hundreds of these tour itineraries, the companies which will make complete package for you. They'll make your local travel, your hotel booking, your flight booking, whatnot, complete. From the moment you step out till you step in, everything can be arranged home. Why do you need to go to a travel agent? So this is one profession which is likely to be going out of business very soon. Now, while all this is happening, we saw the new technology, we saw what is going to be out of it. there is another additional factor, catalyst. The chemical people would know it. Catalyst. COVID has become a catalyst for this. Because of the COVID, this acceleration, this transformation now is becoming faster. How? And some of the areas like the video conferencing. People were going at this rate for the video conferencing across. Only the IT companies and some business profiles were using it. Now everyone is using the video conferencing. Schools, the primary school, they are being teaching on the video conferencing. Who would have thought that the teacher and the students are sitting at different locations and learning the school curriculum, the college curriculum? We are conducting webinars on this. And this video conferencing, it has become a big one. The office meetings, the schools and colleges, conferences, cultural programs, everything is happening on video conferencing. The smart distancing. Smart distancing, this technology enables smart distancing. Social distancing is over. Now we'll talk about smart distancing. The smart distancing will help the technologies in these areas in the next 3 to 5 years to grow in a very exponential way, which is like the driverless cars, because the driver is also a human. There is that possibility of transmission. And who thinks that driverless cars are less accident prone? Please think again. Sorry, you are totally wrong, because a driverless car is far more in control, accurate than a human being. For example, if at a junction, at a crossroad, there is less traffic, and in India we have a tendency to disobey the traffic if there is less traffic and odd hours, even if the signal is something people do. With all respect, we should not do that. I don't advocate that, but there is some cases people do that. Imagine a situation where there is such a traffic light and there is a less time and odd hours and all. That's a night, it's 2 o'clock. Some people may not like to obey, standing there, for waiting for it to turn green and all that. So if it happens that there are two cars at two sides and at night 2 o'clock, they both disobey the signal, the chances that, they judge each other are lesser. Whereas in automatic car, they are all connected. Driverless cars will be connected in GPS in future. And they will immediately be figured out whether who is coming fast, who is not coming, and then they will decide. So the accident can be avoided. Not only that, a driverless car, there are a question asked that, how if a child suddenly comes in front of a car, how it will stop? Is it equipped to that? Yes, it is equipped. That is where artificial intelligence and machine learning is built up into the car. The car, any driverless car will have at least 6 to 8 cameras around it at different sites. And these cameras are continuously sensing all the objects that are in its vicinity. And ahead, if it sees, say, 100 meters in front of it, if it sees an object like a tree, then I say object like a tree because there are thousands of tree images have been fed into the algorithm to identify a tree by that camera. And if it finds a tree, it is clear in its mind. The car knows that the tree doesn't move generally. It doesn't move. However, if it spots a child on the pavement, on the roadside, it remains cautious that, yes, I need to be able to brake if the child comes in between, because children are unpredictable. Humans are unpredictable. What children? Even grown-ups are unpredictable. In India, we have, everywhere we have this. So these kind of controls, high-level controls through automation will be there for driverless cars. The touchless lifts. I mean, in lift now, soon there are mechanisms already coming out in market where you don't have to press the button. I mean, it's like a proximity. You just put your hand in front of the button and it will be there. Or you press the button with your shoes, so that is very less harmful to you. So these are things. And the taps, because these are the area, the lift buttons, the public taps, and the soap dispensers in the public areas. These are the areas which are more susceptible for transmitting the virus. So these all will become contactless in future. The door handles to the public areas and all that. And the robotic robotic process applications in the bulk manufacturing industries and the even the waiters. I mean, there are some hotels, I'm sure, I know there are 1 or 2 hotels in Kerala also. In Bangalore, I know it is there, where they have deployed the robots for serving the food. It's a very routine kind of act, right? Robots, I mean, waiters don't do anything. I mean, sorry to say, but waiters, value addition is very less in their job. They just have to collect the thing from the kitchen, distribute it to the table. The last two slides I've got the skills upgradation. I've got 5 more minutes, so I will wind up now. The skills upgradation is the industrial revolution. Now, if we go back into the history, when the industrial revolution happened, people were worried that they will lose their jobs because there were machines in the agricultural field, industries, and all that. However, they were employed somewhere else again, some other job they got. Similar kind of situation happened when IT revolution took place in 90s in India, 91 to be precise. And national banks, they all resisted this kind of IT, information technology revolution and all. They said, no, we don't want computerization is the word. But then it happened and people were still employed somewhere. However, the situation is grim. It is not going to be the same, because if all the estimates and the predictions go correct, by next 1 decade, because of the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotic process applications, there will be 1 billion people worldwide left jobless, and they will have no aptitude to upgrade themselves to the new skills that are required. A cab driver will have no intelligence to study the artificial intelligence. This is a big problem that the humankind will face because of having such large number. 1 billion people is around how much? Around 15% of the total population in the world. And they remaining jobless is a civil threat to the society. So this is what is going to happen. It is not a choice anymore for people to upgrade themselves. It is a compulsion. So wherever you are, whatever you are doing, you need to upgrade and enhance your skills to be able to face the future. Otherwise, it may not be such a rosy prospects in the future. 2 examples. Dr. Jose, if I can continue for 5 more minutes, right? My time is up actually. Okay, I'm not hearing, so maybe I will take it as his acceptance. I can. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. There are 2 examples which I want to give. There are maybe probably some of you might know it, but every time I say these examples, and I say this most of the time in my addresses, is these 2 people inspire me a lot, and they will inspire you, and they will inspire everyone. This is the case of one person called Anudeep Durishetty. Go and Google it and you will find it. Anudeep Durishetty, 2016, he topped the IAS. Now, IAS, Indian Administrative Service, all of us know it's a very prestigious exam which needs a lot of hard work. You need to be absolutely master in that field. And all of us know that there are specialized coaching centers across all the cities to prepare for the IAS. And some of those reputed coaching centers, they have an entrance exam to get admission into those coaching for appearing for IAS. So this Anudeep Durishetty, when he was topper, obviously the press and the journalists and everyone, they went to him, they said, we want to know which coaching class you went to, because we are curious to know, because they've created such a gem like you. And he said, I didn't go to any coaching class. I only studied from YouTube and Google. Can you believe this? From YouTube and Google. Now tell me, who doesn't have access to YouTube and Google? All of us have access. So we now know what can be done. What is the capacity, the power of YouTube and Google, how much it can take you in life forward. The second example is of our own, our own Kerala guy, Ernakulam, K. Srinath. Again, Google it. K. Srinath in 2018, he topped the Kerala Public Commission exam. And you will be absolutely stunned and surprised to know he worked as a porter, a coolie, a hamal on the Ernakulam railway station. He was poor. And he used the free Wi-Fi that is provided on the railway station to use it through his earplugs while carrying the luggage of the people, the study material that is required to prepare for the exams. I don't think anybody can be in a worse situation than him to study for this and top the exam. So these 2 people always inspire me that yes, we have the resources available. What is required is the will, the desire to perform and to proceed on that. And the last one is the important point before the last slide, which is just the summing up, is that coming straight to the point, if you have, any one of you have any entrepreneurship ideas, there is no better time than what it is today. You heard about Make in India, you heard about Startup India, you heard about Atmanirbhar Bharat, which we talked about very recently due to COVID. In the next 3 years, Many companies from China, global companies, they are shifting their base from China for the political reasons everyone knows about. I don't need to say that. But India stands to gain a lot from that. And the benefit of India can be shared by some of us if we're really on the time, at the right time, at the right place. And just to give you more idea on this, there is a site called Startup India. Just after this webinar is over, go into Startup India, and I have seen 125 different schemes. Call it biology, call it agriculture, call it mathematics, call it science, chemistry, you name it, electrical, energy efficiency, every field that you can think of has got some kind of an incentive for you to start on a very small scale, micro industries. So whoever has got genuine interest, you can definitely have in the Startup India, and the government is really proposing, and it is pushing the people to start their own industries like never before. So this is your time and you can do that. My slide now. Last slide, so 3 more minutes just. Use the lockdown very wisely. We had 4 lockdowns and now currently what we call as unlock 1, and will be unlock down 2, unlock down 3. And I wish, I pray, I hope there is no more lockdown coming back after the second wave and all that. But the possibility cannot be denied. During this lockdown, we have, all of us have seen a lot of jokes on the social media. We are all connected socially about, people creating recipes and enjoying, and many jokes about it. But tomorrow a question will be asked to each one of us: how you have utilized your time during the lockdown? And that you have to answer it to ourselves, need not to others, because that's an opportunity given to us. And if we waste that opportunity, we are responsible for that. So even the lockdowns are not fully lifted, please make use of the lockdown. You have it at your disposal. Time is something which is a depleting resource. You may get money, you may lose money, you may temporarily lose health and again regain the health. But time is the only resource which you will never get back in your life. So use the remaining part of the lockdown very wisely. Learn something. There is no excuse if you do not do any of your health improvement activities. Do simple yoga. Do simple walking inside the house, around the house. Build your health. Your health is going to be with you throughout. You can't, be a great man with a bad health. You need to be, first of all, good. And that is something, the basic, without any expenditure, you can do it. And it is your obligation. You need to keep yourself fit. Why you should not be? You should enjoy the life. And you have every right and you should make every effort to do that. Develop a hobby. This point is particularly for all the academicians, because many of you are faculty. I know you are doing a great job. You are doing faculty, you are doing a lot of research, you are doing a lot of studies, further, everything. But just have some kind of a hobby also. If you have a hobby, I'm very happy about that. Please pursue that hobby. If not, it is the time to, because you need to live life in a balanced way. It's not fair that you always think about only the research and all. You become dry. The life will not have any meaning in that. You need to enjoy life as well. It will help you to relax, unwind when you are stressed up because of your research work and whatever. So it can be anything. Maybe play an instrument, write something, sing, draw something. Any hobbies can be of anything. Maybe photography, whatsoever. So have a hobby and develop it. The only benchmark of progress is not to compare with others, but with yourself. You should be better today than what you were yesterday, and tomorrow you should be better than what you are today. If this criteria is met, you are on the right path. If not, you are not on the right path. This is the only thing I can say. And the last point, last point before I wind up, this is a defining moment of the century. The world has pressed a reset button. Everyone is reset. People are all starting new. You have a chance to start a new race starting from tomorrow. So think big, think different, think positive, be helpful to others, be a good human being. This is what I can say at the end. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question box in your control panel. Okay.
Should I start reading I'm seeing the questions now. Can I read them?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, Sonia Joseph has asked, emerging fields, then it will definitely help you. If not, probably then you may have to rethink. But jobs will be there. That is, I don't think it directly related with this, so you can go ahead with that. Mr. Denny CD says, nowadays we are heading that many industries or companies will be shifting their plants China to India. Is that going to happen really? Yes, I think I answered that. It is going to happen. In fact, there are 5 countries which have been listed, which are going to be benefited from this move from China, and India is on the forefront. The second one is Vietnam, and other 3, honestly, I don't remember right now. India is definitely going to benefit, and this is the right time. They are going to shift. Next is Dr. Jose has asked question, what is the future of facility management post-COVID? So definitely facility management will be there, but it will be again with upgraded skills, because facility management as it is, definitely there will be some changes, 20-25% of the things will be changed. There will be new skill set required. For example, currently the facility management may not be catering to so much of a thermal scanning of people or keeping desanitization and all. Just to give one example, in the last 3 months, ever since this COVID has started, there are many facility management companies which have started advertising saying that they make the sanitization tunnels, and they have got the sprays, and they have got the different kind of features which are required to be followed in these times. So facility management will be definitely required, but again in a different shape and different form, which will be adhering to the more hygiene kind of thing. So that will be definitely there. Mr. Punos Joseph, is there a limit to innovation? Sorry, this is, I mean, of course, innovation is the limit. I mean, the only limit to innovation is the human mind. There is no limit. I mean, we can all continue to innovate, and because of people who innovate, only the world moves. Otherwise, the world, we would have been still sitting in caves. Otherwise, innovation definitely, yes, it happens, and there are some crazy guys, really crazy guys required with passion to innovate the things. So yes, it is always possible. Ali CM has asked, everyone advising to start up or setting new profile. How can we raise the fund in or after this pandemic situation? Some tips, please. Yes, as I mentioned, definitely people are changing their profile. People are resetting themselves, their career and their profile. And as I mentioned, Startup India is the site. It's our own government site, and the government is never before pushed people to start entrepreneurship like they are doing right now. There are several incentives like funding of the project, stake in the project, tax rebates for the first few years, which are given to enable the young, talented people to start their own businesses. This is the motive of the government. They want people to become self-reliant, and they are promoting people to become, their own small setup business, whatever. So please visit the Startup India site, and you will find your chosen area that what are the schemes and incentives are available for that. Next question is from Nita. If we start a business after COVID, what are the chances that have to be adopted in the planning scenarios? Okay, this question I will try to answer, of course. I may not be there, I'm not an expert in this, but I can say that yes, definitely after COVID, there are some changes. There are some changes which are 3 to 5 years range, and there are some things which are beyond. Now, definitely for next 3 to 5 years, the changes are going to happen are there will be no more conferences. I see now the Universal Engineering College has got a conference hall of 1,000 people capacity. Honestly, I don't see that in the next 6 months at least that you are going to use that with full packed capacity. That's a fact. We have to agree that. The big convention centers in the high-tech cities with 2,000 people, 3,000 people capacity, that will not happen. The exhibitions which are planned will not happen. People had earlier postponed only the exhibitions and events up to this year. Now, up to November and even the first quarter of the next year also is being postponed because people don't know. The aviation sector is big, sir. The hotel industry is a sufferer. Yesterday, I mean, Munir has said many of the things, and earlier also Dr. Mike has said. So, your business ensure that it follows the social distancing, because people are dining, for example, restaurants. the restaurants will not be functioning very effectively now, because there is a standard requirement of 2 meters to be kept between two customers, and hotel will find it very inefficient, unfeasible, not feasible, unviable to operate the hotel in such a situation. So Poma has asked one question: are there different parameters to follow for big and medium-sized companies? Sorry, that question was lost. You can get back to that question. I'm not seeing that. Okay, I'll move to the next question. Antonio Joseph, there are a lot of space for improvements in circuit branches and computer science, but how should a mechanical engineer plan his career ahead, as it's difficult to stay as a conventional mechanical engineer in this fast growing world? Very right, Mr. Antonio, you are absolutely correct. In fact, I mean, without uh, Dr. Jose is one of the veterans. He is one of the very professional and very highly skilled and expert in the mechanical engineering field. And I'm sure, I think he's in the last 15 years, he's teaching in Universal Engineering College. But I doubt whether there is any significant change in the syllabus that he is teaching to the students. There is no. Or will be removed, because there will be robots applied at different process application lines, which will do the same action. There is no human required. I mean, it's a machine can do it much better than that. There is one anonymous attendee, interesting. It says, post-COVID, what are your expectations in the real estate field? If social distancing becomes a norm in the future, wouldn't that mean the metro cities and other overpopulated areas will find a decrease in the real estate prices in these areas? If so, does launching a company in the property development will be bad or good? Interesting and very good question. Now there is a reverse migration happening. There are some reports which are already coming, and that will grow. The major cities are the epidemics. If you really see in India today and worldwide also, in US it is New York, but in India, Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata and Chennai, they are the hotspots today. It was not designed, it was not intentional, but it happened like this. And the people are scared to go to the now metros. They are moving away from the metros into the tier B and the tier 3 cities. And there, the real estate prices are going to boom in the next 3 to 5 years, because people will find there will be no. In fact, the real estate, the office segment, the commercial segment is going to take a big hit, because people are forced to work from home. There are many companies who are now suddenly they realize that there is no office requirement. If they had an office of 50 people sitting capacity earlier, now probably they will need only 20 people sitting capacity. So why is pay rent for such a big office? So all huge offices and the huge real estates for public use, whatever is there, they are going to suffer. But yes, in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, there will be some improvement. I mean, some prospects will be there for construction in that. So this probably answers your question.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I take this opportunity to thank you for your enlightening talk, sir. Yeah. And sir, I'm basically a mechanical engineer and assistant professor by profession. So one difficulty we teachers always had was giving a real-time exposure to our students in mechanical engineering. Because unlike the computer science or the challenge that they are actually going to face around internships and real-time industrial visits, but post-COVID, I find that it's going to be difficult, at least for the 2 to 3 batches that are currently running. So how do you think we can incorporate the latest technologies into our syllabus and also into the curriculum that we are using? Or also, how can the industries help us in a better way using the latest technologies to give them a better exposure and bring them closer to the real-time world?
Okay, Ashwati, I heard your question. Initially, for some time there was some net probably was not really good. So, but I will assume I got the question well. That it's a mechanical engineering. How do we move ahead, and how do we get the students into the industrial interaction and the way forward for them? I think, as you rightly said, there is no big discovery or big invention or innovation happening in the domain of mechanical engineering as such. However, as I said earlier also, in the industries, there is a big opportunity of uh, automating the things. I mean, by robots, by applying the robots instead of humans, where all it can be done. And this, I'm sure, the way forward on a very broad level can be first give the exposure to the students, the batches whom we want to really take this opportunity on. To first give them a short course on the RPAs, that is robotic process application, artificial intelligence, happy. And this way, I mean, he will encourage you, he will motivate you, and you can have some kind of a joint collaboration of developing his industries into those areas. But as I said earlier, just a domain, mechanical, traditional, there may not be much scope. I could be wrong. But however, definitely it exists when you couple it, when you join it with AI, ML, and RPA. As I said, this is what I said. Does it answer your question, Aswati?
We have one more question
Yes.
from Anupama Jinan.
Yeah.
And the question is, are there different parameters to follow for big and medium-sized companies once the lockdown ends?
Different parameters to follow for medium and big companies. Yes, of course, the big companies will face a lot of problems because the working working from home and remote working, then they will continue with that. And this is a change for next 3 to 5 years. So instead of saying there is a problem, it's an opportunity. I mean, it's a different way of working which they have to adopt. There is no option here. And they need to accept and agree that there will not be large number of people sitting in offices, large number of people in the workshops, and they need to accept that and work accordingly. So many people who are working from home may not go back to offices. In fact, there is one company I know that managing director said to its employees that even after the lockdowns are lifted, we probably will never see each other in the office. They may have a small meeting in some of the hotels from time to time, and that's it. So this is what is the anticipation.
It looks like we have covered all our questions. Is there anything else you want to cover before wrap up? Anyone you want to ask questions? Okay, no one. Okay, thank you, sir. On behalf of Universal Engineering College, I would like to express our profound gratitude to the presenter of our third day webinar series, Mr. Suhas Inamda, for the great and inspiring session. And I also express our sincere thanks to our principal, Dr. Joski Jacob. And I'm happy to express vote of thanks to our staff members who have made this seminar a grand success. Once again, thank you everyone. We appreciate your effort for being here. And I would like to request you all to fill the feedback form that we have sent in your mail. And I would like to remind that it will be considered as your attendance sheet. So kindly fill it and send us today if possible. Now, I would like to remind about tomorrow's webinar. We will have Mr. Abdul Abdul Jabbar on the topic Manufacturing a Real Life Experience. And thanks again for joining us today. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It was my pleasure too. Thank you.